Former acting Attorney General Sally Yates schooled Ted Cruz earlier this week. Of course, ever since Trump fired Comey, that's all that anybody's ever talking about, and we forgot about this. So let me get into it, and we'll talk about the Comey thing later. Sally Yates was fired by Donald Trump because she did not back up his travel ban. And she essentially said that it was not constitutional what the executive order was doing. You cannot, based on religion, decline anybody entering into the United States. That is not what the United States stands for. It's religious freedom. Don't give me your garbage about the Founding Fathers. That's what it meant. So here's a video of Sally schooling Ted. And let me preface this by saying that Ted thought he was a smart guy. He came in with a statute, a U.S. code that he thought he was going to, it was one of those gotcha questions. And she turned around and used it against him. Not only did he ask her one question, but two, both of them attempting to catch her in some kind of act. And she gave him a what for but good. Then we'll talk. Take a look at it and we'll talk about it.
Is it correct that the Constitution vests the executive authority in the president?
Yes.
And if an attorney general disagrees with a policy decision of the president, a policy decision that is lawful, does the attorney general have the authority to direct the Department of Justice to defy the president's order?
I don't know whether the attorney general has the authority to do that or not, but I don't think it would be a good idea. And that's not what I did in this case.
Well, are you familiar with 8 U.S.C. Section 1182?
Not off the top of my head, no.
Well, it is the binding statutory authority for the executive order that you refused to implement and that led to your termination. So it certainly is a relevant and not a terribly obscure statute. By the express text of the statute, it says, quote, whenever the president finds that the entry of any alien or of any class of aliens into the United States would be detrimental to the interests of the United States, he may by proclamation and for such period as he shall deem necessary suspend the entry of all aliens or any class of aliens as immigrants or non-immigrants, or impose on the entry of aliens any restrictions he may deem appropriate. Would you agree that that is broad statutory authorization?
I would, and I am familiar with that. And I'm also familiar with an additional provision of the INA that says no person shall receive preference or be discriminated against in issuance of a visa because of race, nationality, or place of birth. That, I believe, was promulgated after the statute that you just quoted. And that's been part of the discussion with the courts with respect to the INA, is whether this more specific statute trumps the first one that you just described. But my concern was not an INA concern here. It rather was a constitutional concern, whether or not this the executive order here violated the Constitution, specifically with the Establishment Clause and equal protection and due process.
A very, very brief question. In the over 200 years of the Department of Justice history, are you aware of any instance in which the Department of Justice has formally approved the legality of a policy and 3 days later the Attorney General has directed the department not to follow that policy and to defy that policy?
I'm not, but I'm also not aware of a situation where the Office of Legal Counsel was advised not to tell the Attorney General about it until after it was over.
Okay, so you see there, Ted was throwing out this statute, and the first thing that Sally did was say, well, yeah, but here's the amendment to the original statute that was not put in there in the first place. And she says, well, the question is whether this Second Amendment trumps it. Yes, of course it does, because that's what the amendment did. It added to it. It said you cannot discriminate against someone because of their religion. That's the constitutional part of it. And then Ted comes back over with another question saying, well, you defied your leader, essentially. Is she not supposed to do that? I'm pretty sure that the executive, the legislative, and the judicial branches are three separate entities. It's called checks and balances, and that's what The Constitution and the Founding Fathers meant for it to be checks and balances. One person cannot have all the authority and fire anybody when they want to and just come up with some arcane bullshit idea. So Ted Cruz asks a second question, another gotcha question. He's like, in the last 200 years, has any attorney general ever approved something and then 3 days later disapproved it? And she says, well, yeah, but she didn't. She says, yeah, that's true. It's never happened before. But when has the legal department of the White House and the legislative branch ever just not told the Justice Department about their conversation? So they made a ruling on it before they found out the information that the legislative never gave them. So of course they're going to rule against it. And let's just go back to the campaign, for God's sakes. Donald Trump, over and over and over again, a Muslim ban, a Muslim ban, a Muslim ban. And then he's saying now it's not a Muslim ban. You cannot have your cake and eat it too. I know that's the stupidest analogy. Why would somebody get a cake and not be able to eat it? You can't. You cannot play both sides of the question. You cannot have a yes or a no answer on both sides. You cannot do that. Eventually, somebody's going to catch you. Now, of course, Trump's base cannot be wavered on this. They just blindly follow along with him. Trump, 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 Trump. But this kind of stuff is going to continue to happen because the president talks out of both sides of his mouth, and Congress does the Republican Congress does everything that they can to make sure that you don't see the difference. Hey, this is Antoinette from Transistor Rodeo. If you like what you saw here, please subscribe for more videos and content, and you can follow me on Twitter at Transistor Rodeo.